The purpose of this film was simple. It was asking the question, can you be gay and formally religious? It seems simple. During the making of this film, I met with so many people who were tortured by religion. Tortured, they experienced holy horrors like you would not believe. And yet, they came back. It's like an abusive relationship. I know people say that you can be both. I just couldn't understand how.
Since the dawn of consciousness, humans have searched for a belief system. We want to know, how should I live? Why is the world like this? And what happens when I die? Religions give us many answers, an endless number of options, and all are convinced that they alone hold the truth. Why are there so many? And how can they all be right? Fertility goddesses and pagan earth spirits of the Celts, the dreaming of Australian indigenous peoples, a multitude of gods, goddesses and spirits in Chinese and African cultures, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, Muslims and Jews. Our faiths tell us who is ascending to everlasting bliss and who's heading south, and it seems the gays are always going down. Human beings live and die at the intersection of sexuality and faith. Let's hear some stories.
No, as far as the Catholic Church goes.
I belong to the Catholic Church.
I know you do because you choose to, not because they choose to include you.
They don't have a right to choose to include me or exclude me.
In your opinion.
They've never said that.
They have.
They haven't.
Then why can't you marry?
Do you still take communion?
Yes.
He damn sight better because he hasn't sinned against anybody. It couldn't be there without a God saying that it's okay.
That such people have to have a completely sexless life, which is completely unnatural. And therefore that cannot be anything more than a staging post on a journey towards acceptance of the fact that some people have a different sexual attraction. And if that is the case, and if that is so in nature, that is how it is intended to be. If you like, that is how God made it, and therefore the churches and religions have to accommodate to that fact.
Walk into the church building without crying and without feeling like I was a failure to God. And so I remember one day realizing that maybe, hey, I'm never going to change. And that realization itself, of that maybe I'm not going to change, was essentially I jumped to, okay, if I'm not going to change, then God's never going to love me, and then I'm bound for hell anyway. And I just can't take it anymore. And I attempted suicide. I started really with the self-harm, and I started cutting my wrists and all these different things. And I wasn't doing it to get attention or anything like that. I was doing it because I felt like such a failure, like such a mistake to God, that I just, I didn't honestly feel like I deserved any more chances.
Why is God making gay people?
What's the point?
Well, you could argue that, and I do believe that really the God of the Old Testament is a moral moron and a psychopath. Being gay is not biologically useless. There's way enough kiddies in the world. I've met very few people in the world who are worth repeating. I've met very few people whose genes are that marvellous and that amazing that they need to be continued indefinitely. If the church was in the mood to accept that gays and lesbians could teach the church humility, that they have been wrong for most of their history and that their book is wrong. And that's a lesson I think the church can never accept, and that's why they will never really change their attitudes towards gays and lesbians. Because admitting you've been wrong for the entire history of your church is very painful. I really don't want a bar of any organised religion, and I really think the Bible is the most vile, nasty, bloodthirsty book I've ever read, and kiddies should not be exposed to it. I'm Sue Post, I'm a comic, and I used to be a Mormon.
Paganism really embraces the individual and celebrates the individual and the person who can think and who can find their own connection with God, Goddess, with all that is, with whatever you want to call it. Sexuality in spirituality has been around for a very, very long time, and it has been predominantly the organized religions that have made it into something dirty. It at one time was something to be absolutely celebrated. One of the evenings that I was there this weekend, there was an enormous gathering in Tennessee. A few hundred people showed up for this. There's this phenomenal bonfire, about maybe 40, 50 people seated around it, drumming, dancing a little bit, nothing particularly strong. Well, as the evening progressed, the drumming became more intense. Other drummers came and added to it. More drums, more instruments, more voices. People began to dance. There was no song per se. There was no gospel being sung. There was just this incredible atmosphere being created by everybody together there. This fire, it was very primal. It was very natural. It just felt absolutely phenomenal. But people began to disrobe. Not everybody.